The following program is the work of the broadcast students at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. BCIT Magazine features news stories from around the Lower Mainland which were produced over the last week. Responsibility for the content of the show rests completely with the students and their instructors.
Coming up on BCIT Magazine, more young people are attending Remembrance Day ceremonies.
A protest against what people say was too light of a sentence.
And female hockey players visit from India. Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Daria Zargar.
And I'm Catherine Garrett. More Canadians were expected to attend Remembrance Day ceremonies this year. My co-anchor Daria Zargar went to see how much respect the younger generation has for this historical day.
A new survey suggested Canadians of all generations were more likely to attend Remembrance Day ceremonies over the weekend. The poll done by Historic Canada found a 10% increase in the number of young people planning to attend this year. World War II veteran Hans Andersen was a prisoner of war and one of the last men to be released after the conflict.
And we went into Italy, Sicily, and then I had to go to the hospital to get my appendix taken out.
It's good. You got to show your respect. Like if they don't get out and see it, they won't know what went on. It's going to be a lot of storytelling today and reflecting and stuff like that. So it's good for the younger generation to hear about it.
The survey found 41% of 18 to 34-year-olds plan to attend. It said millennials may have personal ties to those who served in more recent conflicts, such as the war in Afghanistan, where 158 Canadian soldiers were killed. Great-granddaughter Paige Hook says she would attend more Remembrance Day ceremonies in the future.
I think it's like a good thing for us to know what happened in the past and stuff like that, and when we're older, I think it's also a really good thing.
Daria Zargar in Surrey for BCIT Magazine. Hundreds gathered in downtown Vancouver to protest a sentence given by a judge to a young offender for sexual assault. As reporter Ashley Moliere found out, it's the length of that sentence that has many upset.
This isn't an arts and crafts session. These women are putting the finishing touches on protest signs. They gathered outside BC Provincial Court to call for Judge Paul Myers to be fired. They say he was too lenient in giving a youth just 2 weeks jail time and 3 years of community service for sexually assaulting 2 victims in 2015 and 2016. Even though they don't know the victims, protest organizers felt the need to act from personal experience.
When I got sexually assaulted at the Sky I'm a sexual assault survivor, so when I heard about the sentencing of 2 weeks, it was just such an outrage. It was like a spit in the face of everybody. 2 weeks for no remorse.
The judge said the youth had already been shunned by the community and that was punishment enough. Protesters strongly disagree.
The fact that the offender showed no remorse whatsoever and plans to appeal his conviction. So he maintained that he was not guilty till the end, and the judge was so soft on him, so it just enraged me.
Organizers circulated a petition which calls for Judge Myers to be dismissed. Regardless, many protesters felt empowered by sharing their stories.
I hope that through this experience, people will continue to come together and talk about rape culture and how it's so prevalent still in our society and how we need to start to talk about this and bring about change because it just needs to stop.
You're not the one to blame. Say, you're not the one to blame. You're not the one to blame. You're not the one to blame. You're not the one to blame.
There's been no indication that the prosecution plans to appeal the sentence.
The hero is...
Ashley Moliere in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
The hero is you.
Many female hockey players in Canada grow up dreaming of playing in the Olympics. But what about those who didn't grow up here or in another hockey country? Ben Ronald takes us to Surrey to see how women from a not-so-traditional hockey nation are helping to grow the sport.
Women's hockey in Surrey is not a rare sight, but if you were lucky enough to be there on Tuesday afternoon, you would have seen something rare. Team India is in town, and the host Surrey Falcons are excited to have them.
I think the biggest storyline is just bringing some focus and a light on female hockey. You know, we tend to focus just within our own area, but it's, as you can see from today, it's actually a global sport.
The Indian national team is only 2 years old, so for these women, coming to Canada is an early highlight in their careers.
Being an ice hockey player, you know, it's always a dream to come to Canada, you know, and here it is, and we are living our dreams.
The competition is one element of sport, but connections made at events like this last a lifetime.
Female hockey, it's more than just hockey. I think it's about giving girls an opportunity to get confidence and take risks and participate together with their peers.
The game on the ice saw back and forth action, with the Falcons taking the 7-1 win. But the Indian team is on the upswing, having beaten the Philippines and the Malaysians this past year. Despite the loss, the hundreds of fans and media alike who packed the arena didn't leave unhappy. And for the Indian players, it was the trip of a lifetime.
Are prepared for, you know, to learn something so that we can go back to our home and then, you know, we can flourish it in our whole country.
Ben Ronald in Surrey for BCIT Magazine.
We are now joined live by our reporter, Ben Ronald. So, Ben, what was the atmosphere like at the game?
You know, Catherine, it was pretty rowdy for a Tuesday afternoon. Like I mentioned, there were over 200 fans in attendance, and the fans were really pulling for both teams, maybe a little bit more for the Indian team, and that was especially true when India scored their lone goal of the match.
And what's next for the Indian national team on their overseas road trip?
Yeah, it's quite a road trip for the team. They flew into Vancouver on Sunday. They spent Monday exploring the city. After their game on Tuesday, they traveled to Calgary, where they'll face off against two Albertan teams this weekend. They'll be in for some tough competition, but I think this is one of those cases where you can truly say it's not about winning or losing. It's about having an opportunity to play the sport.
Coming up after the break, the BC government unveils new plans for affordable housing.
And a weightlifter looks for Olympic redemption.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at
We're there.
really rapid rate, the lower mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Welcome back. On Tuesday, Stats Canada published a report that says an average of 10 people die in Canada every day from illicit drug overdoses. My co-anchor Darya Zargar spoke with someone in the front lines battling this crisis.
In Vancouver, public places like Oppenheimer Park are still hubs for downtown Eastside residents. An outreach worker that helps people struggling with addiction says that this number is surprisingly low.
My initial thoughts are that number is actually sounds a little low to me, seeing as though that we're averaging 4 people a day here in British Columbia that are dying.
The new analysis examines the social and economic backgrounds of people who died from drug overdoses in BC. While all provinces and territories have been affected by this drug crisis in Canada, the most acute is in BC. The study shows that illicit drug overdoses have doubled over the past 5 years. Nearly 75% of those who died were men between the ages of 25 and 54. Venna explains why he thinks these deaths are continuing to happen.
So if someone buys a bag of fentanyl and they use, say they use one section of it and it's 15% strong, then they use another section, it's 45%, and then another section could be 70%. So you can see what's going on here. They do their first initial use, and it's like, oh, this isn't as strong as I'm used to. I'll do another batch.
Venna says that after 2 years of battling this overdose crisis, he doesn't see much changing in the future. Daria Zargar in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
The BC government announced a series of new affordable housing projects. Jeff Mallow has more on the almost 5,000 rental homes to be built for BC families and seniors.
The Honourable John Horgan. Mr. Premier. Thanks, George. Yeah.
Premier John Horgan and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Selena Robinson, announced $492 million in new spending for new affordable rental homes.
And we want housing for middle-income people.
Vancouver is set to get 1,100 new homes because of these affordable housing projects, the most out of any other city in BC. There will be 72 projects across BC that will see the construction of new affordable mixed-income rental homes. The projects will be primarily for low to middle class families like the Ziams. Rafan Ziam is a refugee from Sri Lanka. She says her first residence here was not enough space for her family of 6.
We were living in a basement suite, 2-bedroom basement suite, which is very crowded. Moving to Chelsea Garden, we were able to do other things, like not just like putting food on the table and the roof over our head.
8 years later, the family moved into a new affordable home built by the province, and they've been grateful ever since.
I did a happy dance, my daughter said, and then I was so happy.
The new rental homes will be built over the next 2 to 3 years and will be available to immigrants, seniors, and families, as the government puts it, for anyone in need of a place to stay. Jeff Mell in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
A high school weightlifter is continuing to pursue her dream of competing at the Olympic. And as Jason Manowis found out, it's all despite an error that caused her to miss the Youth Olympics.
Frustration, anger, and confusion. This is what went through the mind of 17-year-old weightlifter Jeanette Billing. After training for several years to make Canada's Youth Olympic team and meeting all the standards, the only roadblock was unfilled paperwork by the Canadian weightlifting team. The missed opportunity still bothers the young weightlifter, but now she uses the hurdle as motivation for larger goals.
That thought of not going to the Youth Olympics was still there. It was like a fresh wound, right? And it still hasn't filled up. I thought about it every training session too. It was really hard to. Even a couple days after that, even till today, it's hard to keep training, but I know I have to push through it in order to pursue my dream of actually competing at the Olympics.
Jeanette is not alone in her journey to the Olympics. She's joined by her older sister Helena, who not only trains with her, but mentors her too.
She's really mentally stronger than a lot of athletes. Even if her training isn't going as well as it should be, when she's on the platform, it's just her competing.
Throughout the training, the sisters have fun, push, and motivate each other. It's their bond as sisters that their coach says separates them from everyone else.
They do the training over here, they encourage each other, but also at home, in their daily life, after the training, they are partners. So that is the major thing, that they are very good friends, they are the good training partners, and they are the sisters.
The next Summer Olympics is not until 2020, but in the meantime, Jeanette will continue her journey at the Junior Nationals. Jason Manowis in Surrey for BCIT Magazine.
We are now joined live by our reporter Jason Manowis. So Jason, what exactly happened with the paperwork?
So Daria, there are only 2 ways to be able to get a seat at the Youth Canadian Olympics, or at the Youth Olympics. One is you have to be part of a team, or 2, you can individually qualify as a wild card. Now for Jeanette, she met all of her standards. She's actually considered the best youth in Canada because she's medaled multiple times in the past 2 years. Now, for the Canadian Olympic team, they did not hold up their end because they were not able to fill out the paperwork, thus causing Jeanette to lose her seat at the Youth Olympics.
And what's next for Jeanette?
For her, she'll be trying to continue her journey to the Olympics, and it starts on January 19th at the Junior National Weightlifting Competition at Brassard, Quebec.
Coming up after the break, a job fair aimed at newcomers to Canada.
And the Baha'i community celebrates their 2 holiest days of the year.
Back order control.
Zoom out just a tiny bit.
Sorry, say that again.
Can you zoom out a tiny bit?
It's a quick 2 years. They get you in and they get you out, but you leave with so much more knowledge when you walk in.
The BC Hockey League hosted the 3rd annual BCHL Showcase last weekend. The showcase also allows fans to come.
The tools you learn are very valuable. You leave with a comprehensive knowledge of many of the programs that are used in everyday workforces around all the newsrooms in Vancouver. At the beginning of your 2-year program, you don't really expect that in 2 years' time you're walking out ready to be a part of the journalism industry.
Good morning and welcome to Evolution News. I'm Chantal Pesquita.
I was lucky enough to get a job a week after I graduated. I think that has a lot to do with the teachers and fellow students prepping you for the outside life once you graduate from BCIT. Yeah, if it wasn't for BCIT, I'd be lost.
Did you know that this is the 16th year of Movember, an event that happens every November to raise awareness around men's health issues?
Did you know that they're on the verge of raising over $1 billion this year?
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of mustaches.
So what are some ways that we can help out?
Let's go find out.
Hey, nice stash, bro.
Or you can come down to the Mustache Gala Party. She's going to be singing, dancing, lots of fun prizes, and all the proceeds go towards the Movember Foundation.
Get your blood pumping too with the Mustache Miler, a 5-kilometer charity race. The after party includes food, beer, massages, and mustache grooming.
And if you're feeling limber enough, you can wrap your month up with the Mustache Yoga Workshop. So grab your Mo Bros and your Mo Sisters and go check out one of these great events.
Happy Movember!
Welcome back. We have a special guest in our studio today. Mitch Hermanson from the Movember Foundation is here to talk to us about what he does to raise funds for the cause. So Mitch, you're swimming in 8 kilometers into the ocean. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so most people that grow mustaches raise funds growing a mustache, but I work at Movember and have a mustache all year round, so I try to do something a little bit different to fundraise, and I decided I was gonna swim 8 kilometers in the ocean, as one does, and raise some funds for and awareness for men's health, specifically men's mental health.
And was there someone that inspired you to do this?
Well, I'm doing it for my grandfather, to be completely honest. So I never got to meet him, unfortunately. He sadly took his life before, when I was actually just a baby. So I'm doing it in honor of him, and it's unfortunately, you know, a story that's not uncommon. 3/4 of all suicides in Canada are by men. So there's a big issue that we really need to shine a light on.
And you're close to raising $1 billion. How does that feel?
Yeah, globally we are. We started in 2003, and a lot of people think it started in Canada. It actually started in Australia, and now we're in 20 countries. We've had over 5 million supporters. So over those years, we've racked up a lot of funds raised for men's health. Not bad, considering it all started with a few mustaches.
Well, thanks for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Packing up everything and starting over in a foreign country is a huge adjustment. My co-anchor Catherine Garrett went to take a look at a job fair aimed at new Canadians.
Hundreds showed up at the Canadian Immigrant Job Fair in Vancouver. It's an event that aims to help anyone new to the country develop and refine marketable skills, something that can help smooth the transition into a new home. The fair offers services like free professional headshots, a resume clinic, and an English language practice center, as well as face-to-face meetings and advice with potential employers. For one organizer, this event hits close to home.
I come from a family of refugees, and I was born in Canada, And so for me, it's about straddling the two worlds between being Canadian and being an immigrant. And you know, whether you've been here for 5 years or 5 minutes, sometimes the issues of identity and connection are all the same.
Some first-timers here say they were not sure what to expect, but the adjustment from going from the top of their field to starting from scratch is proving to be difficult.
We come from our countries sometimes in a big position there as engineers or even doctors, but here we start all over, like all over again.
And I think it's something that I've been battling with for probably the last 2 months, because coming from South Africa originally, in a position fairly senior, and having to come to Canada and literally start at the bottom, it does challenge you. It challenges you mentally as well as, I'd probably say, emotionally, because you're going, well, I've done this and I've paid my school fees, why am I having to redo it?
This is the 6th Canadian Immigrant Fair. Last year, over 1,200 newcomers came by these booths, and organizers are hopeful that that record will soon be broken. Catherine Garrett in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine. Every 3 minutes, a Canadian is diagnosed with diabetes. Reporter Ashley Moliere went to an event for World Diabetes Day to find out who is most at risk.
The questionnaire this woman is filling out could possibly save her life. Diabetes Canada is hosting risk assessment clinics across Vancouver community centres in honor of World Diabetes Day. They encourage people to take the test to see if they're at risk for the disease.
They'll be asking questions about your lifestyle, some of the things you eat, your activity level, but they're also going to focus in on your family history. Do you have family members who have diabetes or have had diabetes? And they're also going to ask your ethnicity.
Some of the common signs of diabetes include frequent thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, and blurry vision. The test also includes measuring waist circumference and is free. Many people participated in the event.
I just think it's a great idea to get tested. I know some people who are diabetics, and it seems like it's a real management issue for them on a daily basis.
Although these clinics are limited to this week, the test can be taken online at any time. Diabetes Canada says that anyone that scores in the moderate to high range should go to their doctor for a blood test. Ashley Moliere in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Halloween is over, there's a nip in the air, and Christmas lights have started to appear. It's holiday time. But it's not just Christians and Jews who are celebrating. Members of the Baha'i faith mark their calendars in early November as a time to serve the community. Ben Ronald went to Port Moody and brings us that story.
The Tri-City Baha'i community is celebrating its holiest days of the year by giving back. More than 40 members of the community gathered to build winter care packages for the Coquitlam homeless shelter. For the Baha'i, early November is a special time of year.
We're celebrating the birthday of the founders of the Baha'i faith, and part of that celebration is doing a service project for the community. So today we have the kids putting together some packages for the shelter in Coquitlam.
The Canadian Baha'i community is relatively small, only 35,000 people. But this tight-knit group gathers around a common purpose to promote unity among all people, a central tenet of the faith.
One of the founding principles of the faith is the oneness of humanity, really eliminating all forms of prejudice and considering everybody as part of one united family. And so I think part of actually building that in reality is about making connections within our community and considering the health and well-being of everybody in our community.
Baha'i community members delivered more than 1,000 sandwiches to the downtown east side last year, and this year's care packages are chock full of warm clothing, hygiene products, and handwritten notes. Assembling dozens of packages may look like hard work, but for this group, hard work goes a lot smoother when you're with your friends. Ben Ronald in Port Moody for BCIT Magazine.
A Toronto activist who has fought to end police street checks says he was stopped by an officer in Vancouver earlier this week. Desmond Cole says he was in the city for no less than 24 hours before an officer stopped him for breaking a bylaw by smoking in Stanley Park. Vancouver police say the incident was not a street check, but that the officer stopped Cole for a bylaw infraction and chose not to give him a ticket.
Elections BC says 6.5% of voters have returned their ballots in the electoral reform referendum. The ballot asks voters to choose between keeping the current first-past-the-post system or move to proportional representation. Ballots must be received by 4:30 p.m. on November 30th and can be returned by mail or in person.
Calgary residents have voted against the city's bid to host the 2026 Olympics. Calgarians voted no to bid for the Games in a tight plebiscite, with just over 56% voting against and 43% voting yes. The Canadian Olympic Committee said in a statement that it was disappointed by the results.
Mail is beginning to move again at Canada Post's Vancouver mail plant. Union workers are heading back after 3 days on the picket line. The Canadian Union of the Postal Workers are taking part in the rotating strikes as the union pushes for contract demands. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the government could act if there's no progress soon.
The doors have opened on an improved same-day urgent primary care unit in Surrey. Health Minister Adrian Dix says at least a quarter of the visits to Surrey Memorial Hospital's emergency ward involved people who should have been seen by a primary care team member. This is the fourth centre in the province as part of the plan to transform primary care in BC.
A conservation area in the province's southeast mountains is being extended to almost 8,000 hectares thanks to a $14.6 million investment. The Dark Woods Conservation Area provides habitats for 40 at-risk species, including grizzly bears, caribou, and wolverines. Nature Conservancy of Canada spokesman Andrew Holland says the expansion will protect watersheds in the areas threatened by industrial and recreational activities. If you have any questions regarding the show, you can contact us at bcit-broadcast.com or bcitnews.com.
That was your BCIT Magazine show for this week. I'm Catherine Garrett.
And I'm Daria Zargar. Thank you for watching. We leave you now with a look outside of Vancouver's harbor.